Tonight we head out beneath a bruised desert sky where the light is all honey and shadows, and the camels make long sighing groans as they settle into their slow march across the sand. You bounce gently on a woven saddle, the sun slipping behind you like a coin into a pouch. Ahead, a line of merchants sways in silence, silhouetted by the soft flicker of oil lanterns strung from packs. Welcome to the Silk Road, where your bed is a moving beast, your pillow smells like goat hide, and if you fall off, well, let's just say you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're already tucked in, let me know your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're perched on the hump of a Bactrian camel. Not the one-hump Arabian kind, but the sturdy double-decker kind favored in the cold deserts of Central Asia. You smell sweat, sun-baked wool, and something suspiciously cheesy wafting from the cargo behind you. Your thighs already ache from the day's ride, but night is falling, and with it comes the desert's favorite magic trick, dropping the temperature faster than a cheap merchant drops prices when Mongols ride into town. Now's the time when seasoned traders adjust their robes, add a second sash, and start muttering sleepy proverbs. The caravan never stops, not really. Night is when the heat is tolerable and the wind blows less dust. If you stop, you're wasting perfectly good darkness. So instead, you sleep while moving. The camels know the drill. Their pace is so rhythmic, so metronome steady, it almost feels like a lullaby. And maybe that's what gets you. After hours of rocking, your body begins to tune in to the rhythm. Your eyes droop, your jaw goes slack, your head lolls. You're still upright, but you're dreaming of grilled lamb and the taste of clean water. Historians still argue whether this kind of sleep qualifies as true rest or just a form of trance-like microsleep. There are no journals written by the merchants themselves describing it. No neat diaries saying, "Today I fell asleep while balancing on Zubair the camel." But oral traditions, passed down along trading routes, suggest that riders learn to nap without ever falling off, especially during the long flat stretches where the only obstacles were mirages and the occasional sand dune shaped exactly like your ex. The preparation starts before nightfall. You adjust your saddle, fluff a grain sack into something resembling a cushion, and check the knots on the side ropes. You tie your left ankle to the wooden frame, not tight enough to cut circulation, but just enough that if you start to tilt too far, the camel will tug you back like a sleep-deprived babysitter. And yes, tying yourself to a camel might sound ridiculous, until you picture the alternative. Waking up face down in a sandpit, with your caravan half a mile ahead, and your shoes still riding away without you. There's an art to getting into camel sleep mode. You shift into a relaxed posture. Lean forward just slightly so your center of gravity matches the sway, and let your arms dangle. Some riders loop them around the top rail of the pack saddle like a lazy octopus. Others keep one hand loosely gripping a strap, the way you might hold your phone even after falling asleep scrolling. In the distance, another trader yawns loud enough to startle a nearby goat. Someone hums the start of a folk song, low wavy notes that match the dunes around you. It's not a lullaby per se, but it does the trick. You glance around. Behind you, the moon has risen in all its smug, full-bellied glory. It lights the desert path better than any torch could. You can almost make out the old caravanserai ruins you passed this morning. black silhouettes of broken stone, once bustling with spice and stories, now just landmarks for lizards. Funny thing, the more exhausted you get, the less weird sleeping on a walking animal seems. It starts to feel normal, almost inevitable, like eating questionable jerky or haggling over porcelain bowls. Besides, your camel seems to enjoy the quiet. His chewing has slowed. His burps have grown contemplative. One mainstream historical fact stands out here. Caravans often traveled between 15 to 25 miles per night, depending on the terrain and political situation. Read whether local warlords were cranky that week. That could mean 10 to 12 hours in motion, which makes sleeping on camelback not a novelty, but a necessity. Without it, you'd arrive half dead, and probably very cranky, which is not ideal when negotiating with silk smugglers or tea fanatics. There's a quirky tidbit travelers whispered about. Some believed camels emitted a low-frequency hum during night marches that encouraged drowsiness. No modern evidence supports this exactly, but if you've ever heard a camel sigh in slow motion, you'll know it's weirdly hypnotic. It's not a lullaby. It's more like a creaky old cello with self-esteem issues, but soothing in its own phlegmy way. You doze again. Your thoughts start to tangle. You're sure you hear snoring, but it's hard to say whether it's your own or your camel's, or possibly the merchant 3 camels over who claim to dream exclusively in market scenes. You imagine stalls of floating pomegranates and carpets that whisper bedtime stories. You float over dunes shaped like rice bowls. You're not quite asleep, but not quite awake either. And then a shout jolts you. Someone dropped a flask. It hits a rock with a clatter. A moment later, laughter. Someone made a joke about how the flask now sleeps where he wishes he could. You smile. Then your head droops again. This, right here, this wobbling, dusty, rhythmic dream ride is the beginning of how Silk Road merchants learned to rest without stopping. How sleep became portable, negotiable, and frankly, a little absurd. So there you are, drifting somewhere between dream and desert. And your camel. Let's call him Magnum, because he looks like he's seen some things. Plods along with a gait that's both irritatingly bouncy and oddly calming. Your left leg has gone numb, your back is half pretzeled, and yet you're still sort of asleep. The strangest part is how the other merchants around you act like this is completely normal. No one's impressed that you managed to nap upright on a beast that smells like fermented blankets. This is just Tuesday for them. Or, well, maybe it's Thursday. Days blur out here when you measure time in camel steps and sandstorms. Tonight you cross the lower curve of the Taklamakan Desert, the place of no return, which is exactly the kind of cheery name ancient traders like to give things. And in case you're wondering, yes, some caravans did disappear here, swallowed whole by rogue dunes or lost to sudden tempests. But you're fine, probably. You tug your scarf tighter around your face. The desert wind at night isn't just cold, it's sharp. Like it's got opinions about your life choices. You shift your weight, trying not to wake up fully. Somewhere beside you, a rider sneezes so hard he nearly topples. He catches himself with a grunt and mutters something about cursed moonlight. That's the other thing about camel sleep. If one person falls, it's a domino effect. Camels are too stubborn to care, but merchants, not so much. To help avoid that, most riders sleep in staggered rotation. You take your turns. 2 hours napping, 2 hours alert, eyes half open for trouble. It's not about bandits, not always. Sometimes it's wolves. Sometimes it's a caravan wheel creaking in protest, or a bundle of saffron slipping loose. Your rest depends on how much you trust the guy behind you to stay awake. Historians still argue whether these rotation systems were formal or just developed naturally, like passing out in shifts became an unspoken agreement. There aren't any surviving handbooks labeled "How to Sleep Without Dying on the Silk Road," but fragments of travelers' logs and bits of poetry hint at the same patterns. Watch, rest, rotate, repeat. If you're wondering how your body adapts to this madness, well, it doesn't, not exactly. But over time, you start slipping into a camel rhythm. Your circadian clock gives up and just starts running on desert time. One mainstream historical fact notes that Silk Road caravans were often accompanied by musicians, not just for entertainment, but for timing. Flute melodies or soft drum beats helped mark hours, much like a lullaby with business hours. And yes, people sang themselves to sleep. Quietly, of course. Nobody wants to hear your full-volume rendition of ancient Uzbek power ballads while they're trying to dream about dumplings. You finally get a moment of deeper rest, the kind that makes your shoulders soften. Your head tilts forward until your forehead taps the coarse saddle padding. That might sound uncomfortable, but trust me, after 18 hours of camel bounce, you'd nap inside a soup pot if it was warm enough. Quirky belief of the night? Some merchants carried sleep coins, little charms rubbed smooth by generations of anxious thumbs. They were said to help with nightmares, not to ward off evil spirits, mind you, just bad dreams. Priorities. And then there's the ancient trick of stuffing your turban with crushed lavender leaves or dried wormwood. The logic was simple. It keeps your head warm and your thoughts calm. Plus, wormwood has this bitter, minty scent that's surprisingly relaxing when it's not trying to kill parasites in your intestines. Practical and soothing. You're drifting again, head bobbing, lulled by that hypnotic pace. It's almost like being rocked in a cradle made of leather and complaints. Behind you, someone starts humming again. This time, a lullaby that's been passed from Kabul to Kashgar. The words are nonsense to you, but the melody is familiar, like a song you forgot you knew. A memory flickers. Your first night on the trade route, clutching your satchel like it held all your dreams. You'd barely managed to stay upright. You remember thinking you'd never get used to the stink, or the jostle, or the lack of beds. But now look at you, tied to a camel, softly snoring, and only half afraid you'll wake up upside down. The camel exhales, a big wheezy sigh that smells like dry oats and resignation. You feel his bones shift under the saddle. There's an art to how they walk, each step measured, precise. Bactrian camels move with a rolling side-to-side sway. Once you stop fighting it actually feels kind of like a wave. The world rises and falls around you and your thoughts fall into that rhythm, like coins dropping into a well. Suddenly, there's a sound, sharp, metallic. A guard riding ahead raises a hand. The caravan slows. You blink away, heart thudding. But it's nothing. Just a loose chain swinging against a cargo chest. False alarm. Still, your pulse takes a minute to calm down. That's the thing. Rest on the Silk Road is never complete. You're always listening, always one snap away from waking. Someone tells a joke about a merchant who snored so loud he got mistaken for a lion and driven off by local hunters. Another voice chimes in, claiming he once slept through a sandstorm while still upright. That part might be true, honestly. You've seen weirder. The horizon begins to shift. Pale light creeps up behind the dunes. Morning is close. You feel a twinge of pride. Another night survived, and somehow a few snatches of rest captured along the way. You untie your ankle, stretch a leg until it pops, and squint toward the east. In a few hours, the caravan will stop at a rest station, an old walled compound where you can take a real nap on a real mat with actual walls. But part of you knows, tonight, you'll be back on this camel, back in motion, back in that in-between place where sleep isn't a destination. It's just a companion. Your eyelids flutter like they're trying to figure out whether this counts as awake. And technically, yes, you're awake. But really, you're in that liminal space between rest and reality. The place Silk Road merchants call home for months on end. And as the morning light stretches over the desert, painting the dunes in soft gold, your brain finally admits it. You slept on a moving camel. Not well, not all the way, but enough. At the next stopping point, an old caravanserai nestled near the edge of a dry riverbed. You dismount with the grace of a newborn giraffe. Your knees wobble. Your hips snap, crackle, and pop like breakfast cereal. But you're grinning. Mostly because you didn't fall off and get trampled in your sleep. Always a win. The caravanserai is built like a small fortress. Thick mud brick walls, heavy wooden gates, and a central courtyard shaded by a solitary fig tree that seems to be both dead and alive at the same time. There's a stone well that groans when you draw water, and a faint smell of donkey stew lingers in the air. It's paradise, relatively speaking. You flop down on a reed mat and exhale like you've been holding it in for a week. Beside you, someone's already snoring. Someone else is boiling a pot of tea that smells like cardamom and goat. You rub your ankles, still sore from being looped into camel stirrups all night, and marvel at how every single muscle in your body has its own complaint form to file. This is the Silk Road sleep cycle. Nap on camel, nap at stop, nap while waiting in line to nap again. Total rest? A myth. You adapt by shrinking the definition of sleep down to its bare essentials. Eyes closed, jaw slack, brain quietish. One mainstream historical fact? Caravanserais like this were spaced about a day's journey apart, usually 30 to 40 kilometers. Think of them as ancient truck stops. But instead of caffeine pills and grimy bathrooms, you got straw pallets, stewed lentils, and communal stories whispered under starry skies. You lean against a wall, half listening as an old merchant from Samarkand shares one such tale about a dream he once had on the back of a camel where he floated above the caravan, watching himself sleep. It's oddly poetic and makes you wonder how many surreal dreams were born of half-conscious desert rides and dehydration. Historians still argue whether some of these dreams found their way into local folklore. The lines between memory, myth, and mirage blur pretty easily when you're crossing a desert with sleep deprivation as your co-pilot. The quirky bit. Some merchants swore by rock pillows. Yes, literally warm stones wrapped in cloth. They'd tuck them behind their backs or under their heads while riding, convinced that the warmth helped with spine alignment and dream clarity. Skeptical? Sure. But after a few weeks on camelback, you'd probably cuddle a cactus if it promised better lumbar support. Another rider tells you about his uncle, who used to tie strips of dried orange peel under his nose while sleeping on the camel, claiming the scent kept away evil thoughts. Evil thoughts being... what? Desire to jump off a mid-jolt? Existential dread about the nature of sand? No one's really sure. But hey, whatever helps you cope. You spend the day at the caravanserai, doing essential things, patching a hole in your shoe with date palm fiber, bargaining for new head wraps, and catching micronaps whenever your back hits a surface wider than your palm. At one point, you doze off sitting upright with your bowl of lentils still in your hand. And when you wake up, someone's placed a fig inside it, like a congratulatory prize. You're not even mad. By afternoon, the call to prepare echoes across the courtyard. The sun starts its descent, and so does your energy level. But it's time to move again. You saddle up Majnun, who looks at you with a mix of boredom and personal offense, and you begin the climb. Mounting a camel is not glamorous. It's a 2-stage hydraulic event that begins with the creature grunting like a clogged trumpet and ends with your spine screaming, "Why?" as you're flung upward in 2 lurches. You settle into the saddle, cinch your scarf against the evening chill, and brace for the long lull. This night's journey is shorter, just a few hours to the next water point. You use the time to practice your sleeping technique. Yes, that's a thing. There's posture involved. Experienced merchants develop a kind of sway sync, letting their upper body flow with the camel's movement, like kelp in slow motion. The trick: don't resist. Lean just enough. Don't go stiff, but don't turn into soup either. Sleep is a delicate dance between tension and surrender. Some veterans even carry tiny wooden wedges they slip between their thighs and the saddle for added stability. Think of it as the 10th century version of a travel neck pillow, utterly ridiculous looking, but weirdly effective. You try a new method tonight, draping your arms over the saddle horn and letting your head dangle slightly forward. It makes you look like a sad puppet on vacation. But you catch a few precious moments of unconsciousness this way. Behind you, someone starts chanting quietly. It's not a song or a prayer, more like a rhythmic recitation of spices. Pepper, clove, ginger, nutmeg. It's either a meditative mantra or they're planning a soup. Either way, the repetition soothes you. Up ahead, the stars shimmer brighter than your tired brain can process. Constellations you don't recognize dance in the black sky. The desert has no light pollution, just occasional lightning in the far-off hills. You feel microscopic and infinite all at once. And yes, you're still tied to your camel. Sleep comes in waves. 10 seconds here, a minute there. Enough to keep going, not enough to remember dreaming. You wonder how many secrets were whispered under these stars, how many deals were struck, and how many dreamers slept just like this, swaying, hoping not to drool into their scarves. You yawn so hard your jaw clicks. Majnun doesn't even flinch. He's used to it. You pull your scarf over your face and let the desert cradle you again. Your next stop isn't really a stop. It's more of a pause. The kind of pause where the caravan halts, not because there's shelter, but because the camels need to relieve themselves. And someone's sandal strap just gave out. The stars overhead aren't moving, but you swear the horizon is shifting, like the earth's just a little tipsy tonight. You slip off Majnun with a grunt and a whisper of thanks. Though it's unclear whether the camel appreciates your gratitude or is just relieved to carry less weight for a few minutes. The night air is brisk, but not cold. Dry, but not biting. Just enough to keep you from fully nodding off when you crouch beside a boulder and chew on a strip of candied ginger, one of the few luxuries you've packed. It helps with nausea. It also sort of tastes like sweetened tree bark, but you're trying not to be picky. A few feet away, 2 younger traders huddle around a tiny ember-filled pan, heating a brew of something that smells like licorice and moss. You ask what it is. One of them grins and says, Camel sleep tea, and passes you a cracked clay cup. You take a sip, and your mouth is flooded with the earthy bitterness of unknown herbs. Your tongue recoils. Your eyelids, on the other hand, flutter like they're preparing to quit their job and retire forever. That's when it hits you. This is a real thing. The tea is part of a long and almost completely forgotten tradition among Silk Road caravans. Herbal infusions brewed from desert plants, meant to induce short-term sleep while traveling. It makes sense. The journey demands it. You can't wait for luxury. You improvise, you blend, you boil what you have. One mainstream historical fact: several records from Persian travelogues and Chinese dynastic archives mention sleeping draughts consumed by travelers, often spiked with local herbs like pagaga, gotukola, or asr al-rawan, and now extinct shrubs said to cause lucid dreams. The recipes were rarely written down, passed instead from camel driver to apprentice, generation after generation, until they vanished into folklore and shifting sand. You take another sip, and this time it's not so bad. Maybe it's the expectation. Maybe your brain is desperate enough to reinterpret the taste as comfort. Either way, your limbs feel heavier now, your breath slower. You look around and realize you're not alone. Half the caravan is in that sleep hover state again. Nobody's fully out, but no one's fully in either. The quirky bit? One merchant near the edge of the group is holding a bundle of dried lizards wrapped in cloth. He's grinding them into powder and sprinkling the result into a tiny dish of camel milk. When he catches you staring, he shrugs and says, "It keeps nightmares away." You don't ask for more details. Some mysteries are better left as odd bedtime stories. Historians still argue whether some of these sleep aids had actual sedative effects, or were mostly placebo, ritual comfort in an unforgiving landscape. After all, belief can be a potent anesthetic. If you think you'll sleep better with powdered lizard in your milk, odds are your body might just play along. The fire dims, and someone starts humming a low tune, off-key but oddly soothing. A lullaby in a dozen different accents, with no words, just tone and memory. You slump against your saddlebag and find your body already committing the ultimate act of rebellion, relaxing. Even as the desert floor remains unforgiving, your back lets go of its tension like a surrender flag. You drift for a few minutes, maybe longer, maybe less. Time becomes this stretchy accordion thing when you're sleep-starved. Minutes feel like hours, and hours disappear like sand in wind. The tea works its quiet spell, and you start dreaming that you're floating on a giant camel made of clouds. You're steering it with reins made of silk. And below you, dunes stretch out like ocean waves frozen in time. You snap awake when Majnun huffs beside you. Everyone's rising again. The break is over. You stretch your arms skyward and groan like a haunted wind chime. The tea's fog is still in your limbs, but it's manageable. You mount up with the fluid awkwardness of someone who has now done this enough times to know how not to fall. The caravan moves forward. The landscape doesn't change much, but your awareness of it sharpens. The moon is lower now, shadows grow longer, and your mind wanders again, this time toward the merchants who crossed this same stretch centuries ago. You wonder if they too clutched tiny cups of bitter desert tea and mumbled lullabies into their scarves. Some did, some didn't, but they all had tricks. One trader beside you, an older man with hands like bark, shares his favorite. He recites prices under his breath. 6 sacks of saffron, 1 bolt of brocade, 22 strings of coral. He says the rhythm of trade is like counting sheep, but with more emotional investment. He chuckles and adds, if you get bored enough, your brain shuts off just to escape your own spreadsheet. You try it. You list off the goods you've seen. Jade pendants, apricot leather, silver combs, Persian ink. It works. Kind of. Until you accidentally whisper pickled yak hooves, and then get the giggles, which is just about the worst thing when you're trying to stay asleep on a moving beast. But soon, silence reclaims the group. The swaying returns, and with it, your barely conscious state. It's not pretty, this style of sleep. You drool, you snort yourself awake once. You even wake up briefly from the sensation of almost tipping. But catch yourself, adjust the saddle blanket under your thighs, and doze again. You're learning. By the time the horizon hints at pink, you've spent more time in that murky grey zone between waking and dreaming than in either state alone. And somehow, you're still functioning. Sort of. Your brain's a soup of ginger, shadow, and sleep tea. But your body's still swaying in sync with Majnun, whose pace is steady as ever. In the distance, the next oasis waits, and with it perhaps another dusty corner to nap in, another story to hear, and, if you're lucky, another merchant willing to share his peculiar bedtime recipe for desert dreams. As the sun heaves itself over the sand dunes, like an elderly cat crawling out of a warm basket, your eyes narrow at the blinding brilliance. There's no dramatic sunrise here, no golden spectacle, no cinematic lens flare. Just raw, ruthless daylight, slapping your already tired face like it owns the place. And honestly, it kind of does. You blink against the glare and reach for the scarf around your neck, tugging it higher over your nose. One of the tricks you've picked up from the older traders is how to create a sleep cocoon, even in full daylight. Think of it as an anti-sun burrito wrap, engineered from layered fabric and sheer desperation. Tuck the corner under your turban. Drape the end down your chest. Twist the middle for extra shade. You can't escape the sun entirely, but you can negotiate with it like a smug landlord. The caravan creaks onward, wheels groaning, hooves crunching, and leather harnesses whispering with every step. And then, mercifully, there it is. A grove of date palms wavering in the distance. You blink again to make sure it's not a mirage. But no, those trees are real, and so is the trickle of water glinting just past them. Your shoulders drop an inch. Oasis. The camp is set quickly. Everyone knows the routine. Unpack, water the camels, protect the goods, and then finally, crash. You collapse onto a mat that's seen better centuries, your limbs stretched at odd angles like a puppet with its strings cut. The warmth of the sand presses up through the mat. Not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. Like sleeping on a sun-warmed beach towel that smells faintly of goat. One mainstream historical fact? Caravanserais. Those famed roadside inns along the Silk Road were often spaced about 30 kilometers apart, roughly the distance a loaded camel could travel in a day. But between them, traders made do however they could. Oases like this were precious waypoints, offering water, shade, and, perhaps most critically, a sliver of sleep before the next brutal stretch. You lie there, motionless, not quite asleep, not quite awake, just absorbing the gentle rustle of palm leaves and the snorting of nearby camels, like a weird desert lullaby on loop. Somewhere nearby, someone's snoring sounds like a small accordion having an asthma attack. It's oddly reassuring, and then a new challenge. Flies. Tiny, relentless, winged gremlins. One lands on your nose and you twitch it off. Another buzzes past your ear like a mosquito with a vendetta. You pull your scarf tighter, wrapping your face like a mummy in a budget horror movie. You almost succeed in ignoring them, until one lands inside your nostril. You sit up, sneeze, and curse under your breath with the enthusiasm of a sleep-deprived poet. A nearby merchant, lounging under a canopy woven from camel wool, smirks and tosses you a sprig of something leafy. "Rub this on your arms," he says. "Fly hate it." You comply. The plant smells like a weird mix of mint and sadness. But sure enough, the flies back off. You silently add it to your growing mental list of weird herbal hacks I didn't know I needed. That, right there, is your quirky tidbit. Desert travelers often use strong-smelling desert herbs, Rao Jangjat, a cousin of wormwood, and Kongot Huang, the wild ancestor of stevia, not just for medicine, but for insect repellent, makeshift tea, and yes, sleep assistance. It wasn't fancy, it was functional. Rubbed on the skin, chewed in a pinch, or brewed into a tea that knocked you out faster than you could say caravan tax. Historians still argue whether these sleep hacks were widely used or mostly confined to specific groups. Persian traders, Uyghur herbalists, or the occasional eccentric who thought sleeping under camels increased dream clarity. Some scholars point out that no unified Silk Road culture existed, just a mess of intersecting customs, always changing, always adapting. Your own dreams, when they come, are hazy but vivid. You see a jade dragon sliding through sand instead of clouds. You chase after it, only to realize it's actually a carpet merchant in disguise. You try to haggle, but your voice turns into camel grunts. The dragon carpenter vanishes into a puff of date dust, and you wake up with your arm asleep and your face imprinted with basket weave. It's only been 20 minutes, maybe 30, but you feel okay, not fresh, not reborn. Just okay enough to sit up, sip some warm water, and watch the camp slowly reanimate. A group of teenagers are weaving small mats from dried palm fronds, probably for sale down the road. You see one of them humming softly, her eyes half closed as she loops strand over strand. That's another trick, keeping your hands busy so your brain zones out. Not quite sleep, but almost. Caravan meditation in a way. Lose yourself in the rhythm, and the hours melt like wax under the sun. You try it too. Pull out your own little project, patching your sock with thick, coarse thread. The stitching is uneven, and you stab your thumb twice. But the process lulls you into that floaty zone again. You lean back, squinting at the light filtered through palm leaves. It dappled your skin in soft, trembling shadows. Somewhere a camel burps. You've stopped caring. That's when the head trader calls for movement again. Breaks over. Water's scarce. The sun's climbing. Time to push on. You rise like a reluctant zombie. Wrap your scarf. Tighten your belt. Sling your pack over one shoulder and return to Majnun, who seems exactly as unimpressed with you as before. You pat his flank and murmur, "We're both prisoners here, buddy," and mount up with a creaky grunt that betrays every one of your joints. The road ahead glimmers faintly in the heat, but your body, while still tired, is no longer fighting you. You've stolen sleep in broken pieces, stitched together by tea, shade, and the rhythm of repetition. You sway back into the procession, surrounded by men and women just as sunburned and sleep-deprived as you. Some joke quietly. Others stare blankly into the dunes, lost in dreams they didn't finish. You wonder how many hours it'll be before the next oasis, or the next bizarre herbal miracle someone swears will knock you out like a sack of bricks. At this point, you'll probably try anything. Your legs, by now, have learned the rhythm of Majnun's stride. Left, right, sway, jolt. You're not riding so much as becoming part of the camel, fused by fatigue, salt, and a thin film of sand that now qualifies as a second skin. You slump forward slightly, one arm wrapped through the harness, the other dangling like a sleepy marionette. This is when you master what dessert traders call camel sleep. Not a myth, not a joke, an actual, terrifying art form perfected by people too tired to care about gravity. You close your eyes for what feels like a blink, and suddenly, you're dreaming, still upright, still moving. Somewhere, your inner child screams, "This is a horrible idea," but your adult self mumbles, "We ball," and surrenders. No one tells you this, but the key is trust. You trust Majnun not to throw you off. You trust your body not to slide sideways. And most importantly, you trust that if you do fall, the sand will be forgiven. Probably. Maybe. Hopefully. Not really. The origins of camel sleep are lost in time, but the tradition is real. Mainstream historians agree that many Silk Road travelers developed ways to nap in the saddle, especially over long, monotonous stretches. Certain riders even had special belts, broad sashes they'd wrap from thigh to saddle horn to hold them in place. Others used short stirrups to wedge their feet tightly and lock in the posture. There's even some sketchy anecdotal evidence from Persian and Central Asian poetry that traders trained themselves to sleep with their eyes open. You blink at that. Sleep with your eyes open? A little unsettling, but considering your current state of consciousness, not totally impossible. You're not sure how long you're out. 10 minutes? 20? There's no real dream, just that floaty, shapeless drift, like a mental loading screen on 3% battery. When you open your eyes again, your mouth is bone dry. Your back aches like you've been folded into a backpack, and your legs feel like noodles someone left in the sun. But you haven't fallen off. Victory. Around you, others are doing the same. A younger merchant, a few camels up, is clearly asleep. His turban flopped forward like a sad pancake. Behind you, a heavily tattooed woman hums a repetitive melody. A tune that sounds like it was invented by someone trying not to lose their mind. A lullaby for sandbrains. The path narrows, winding between low hills that break up the desert monotony. There's a pocket of shade ahead, and the group instinctively slows, as if drawn by an invisible promise of relief. You finally dismount, groaning like a creaky gate. The earth here is cool to the touch, and there's a breeze. You lie flat on your back, arms spread wide, and pretend you're a lizard absorbing bliss. One of the guides, a man with a beard so long you're pretty sure it has its own opinions, offers a flask. It's filled with something slightly sweet, definitely bitter, and questionably legal. He winks. Ancient Uyghur root wine, puts the brain in a hammock. You sip. The taste is... wow. It's like a pine cone married a raisin and they went to therapy together. But sure enough, warmth spreads through your chest. Your thoughts begin to blur at the edges. You lie back and let the strange sensation pull at you like a tide. Here's your quirky tidbit. Several nomadic cultures along the Silk Road brewed fermented herbal concoctions. Not to get drunk, but to ease the body into relaxation. Think of it as ancient sleep quill. Some included ingredients like astragalus, wolfberry root or fermented date skins. Others use more bizarre additions, like dried scorpion powder or donkey's milk, depending on local beliefs. Historians still argue whether these sleep wines were ritual, medicinal, or just trader folklore passed from one sleepless generation to the next. Some records describe entire caravans downing the stuff at once and entering a group rest state, which sounds like either the worst rave or the coziest cult meeting. You shift to your side, using your saddlebag as a pillow. The leather smells like dust, sweat, and a hint of crushed cardamom. You stare at the cloudless sky, that endless bowl of blue, and exhale through your nose, slowly, deliberately. For a few minutes, nothing exists except this. No urgency, no coins clinking, no wild-eyed border guards or sandstorms licking at the horizon. Just warmth, and the rhythmic snoring of 20 semi-conscious adults strewn across the shade like human laundry. Then, rustling. A goat. It's chewing on someone's sandal. The victim wakes with a startled yelp and starts cursing in Uzbek. The goat, entirely unbothered, wanders off with the sandal in its mouth like it's auditioning for a streetwear ad. Another merchant mutters, "Well, guess he's barefoot to Samarkand." Laughter rolls through the camp like a breeze. It's low, tired, and very rural. You smile. In this shared exhaustion, there's camaraderie. Nobody's trying to look cool. Everyone's just trying to stay alive and maybe get a nap in between existential sandstorms. You look over and see a traveler writing something into a small scroll. You scoot closer, curious. It's not poetry or inventory. It's a dream journal. He explains that on the road, dreams are sacred. Traders believed that the desert amplified spiritual messages. A dream during camel sleep? That could be a prophecy. Or just your brain begging for vegetables. Either way, worth jotting down. You ask him what he wrote. He chuckles and says, "Last night, I dreamed my camel turned into my wife and yelled at me for snoring." You both laugh, and somehow that seems entirely possible. The break ends, too soon as always, and the group begins to stir. You mount Mashnan again, this time with the strange comfort of familiarity. You've done this now. Slept on a camel, slept in shade, slept through goat theft and fermented root drinks. You're becoming one of them. The path opens up again. The sun lowers. The shadows grow long. And you find your eyes fluttering closed once more. The body adapting to the motion, the rhythm, the certainty that the earth below will keep moving whether you're conscious or not. And as you drift again, you wonder if your camel dreams while walking. What does he dream of? Probably grass, or chewing, or becoming a TikTok star. Who knows? Your eyelids flutter, lifting slowly as the caravan crests a small ridge. The sun, now an orange coin melting into the western dunes, casts surreal shadows. Long-necked camels stretching like paper cutouts against the sand. A breeze brushes your cheek, and for a fleeting moment, you feel like a nomadic pharaoh surveying their sandy kingdom. Majnun snorts beneath you, likely disagreeing with your delusions of grandeur. The caravan slows again, and you hear the telltale clink of gear being loosened. It's camp time. Not just a nap under some rock's rest stop, but a proper full-night pause. Everyone dismounts with a groan and shuffle, each person resembling a poorly constructed scarecrow. One guy lands on his backside and just stays there. No one questions it. You find yourself oddly jealous. This stop sits in a small depression, partially shielded from the wind by low rock-strewn hills. It's here that the real sleeping magic happens. not just the riding naps or shaded siestas, but the conscious effort to engineer a halfway decent night's sleep in a place with 0 pillows, maximum bugs, and a soundtrack composed entirely of camel farts. You begin setting up your bed, which is a strong word for what is essentially a woolen rug, a saddlebag, and a prayer that scorpions aren't in the mood tonight. But you've learned a few tricks by now, like how wrapping your turban into a bundle makes a halfway decent neck cushion, or how placing your boots near your head acts as a makeshift wind buffer, or how snuggling your water flask like a teddy bear gives you some deeply weird comfort. The others begin their own routines. A group of Persian traders light a tiny fire and warm stones, which they'll later wrap in cloth to place near their feet. A Mongol man performs a few exaggerated stretches, then casually does a handstand. Show off. And, in the corner, a young woman with bells on her belt begins boiling a strange-smelling soup. Sleep potion? Soup potion? Probably both. It's the Silk Road. Everything here is multi-purpose. Historically, Silk Road travelers became low-key geniuses at sleep optimization. They had to. From Central Asia to northern China, these journeys stretched for months, sometimes over a year, through punishing climates and treacherous terrain. While modern travel gurus talk about sleep hygiene, these ancient merchants had no lavender candles or blackout curtains, just creativity, shared tips, and a lot of rugged improvisation. Many use rolled-up camel blankets to create soft barriers around themselves, part warmth, part boundary against midnight ankle biters. Others burned herbs like mugwort or frankincense near their heads, claiming it cleared the spirits and helped them sleep more deeply. Your own campmate swears by smearing crushed juniper leaves on his wrists. Keeps away nightmares, he says. You try it. Now you smell like a haunted Christmas tree, but you feel oddly soothed. Here's a fun, fringe fact. Some caravans employ designated dreamers. Sounds fake, right? But a few old records describe how groups would bring along mystics or monks believed to have prophetic dreams. They'd be treated well, fed extra, and encouraged to sleep as much as possible, so their visions could guide route decisions or warn of danger. One Persian text even claims a monk dreamed of a sandstorm days before it hit, saving the caravan by guiding them to a sheltered gorge. Historians still argue whether this was legitimate foresight or post-facto storytelling with extra spice. Night falls properly now, blanketing the land in blue velvet. The stars spill out, sharper than diamonds, with the constellations you've never even seen back home. You lie back on your makeshift bed, the fabric warm from your body heat, and exhale deeply. The sounds of camp blend into a sleepy lullaby, murmured conversation, the gentle shifting of camels, the crackle of a dying fire. Your body feels like sand poured into a cloth sack, weighty, slow, and somehow content. Someone starts humming. Low, rhythmic, hypnotic. It's a lullaby, maybe Turkish or Uyghur, filled with minor notes that tug at your heart in a way you don't expect. The song weaves through the camp like a soft thread, tying you all together. For one surreal moment, everyone breathes in sync, bound not by blood or creed, but by the shared need for sleep under indifferent stars. You roll onto your side, eyes half closed. Your mind begins that slow, dreamy descent. And right as you start to drift, Majnun lets out a wet, honking snore that nearly sends you levitating. You bolt upright. The camel is lying 5 feet away, smug and snoring like a broken accordion. A couple of travelers mutter curses in various dialects. Someone throws a sandal at him, which he somehow catches in his teeth. You stare at your four-legged betrayer, whispering, "I hope you dream of sand fleas." Eventually, the camp stills again. You try to let yourself melt. The air cools. Your breath grows longer. Your thoughts blurrier. You think about all the tiny rituals these travelers perfected. The herbal rubs, the warmed stones, the dream logs. Not because they were luxurious, but because they were necessary. They were how you made it through, one night at a time. And somehow, this bizarre pile of gear and grit and weird goat cheese smells begins to feel like home. You're not sleeping in a bed. You're not even really horizontal. But in a strange, creaky, camel-farted way, you're at peace. As you finally feel yourself slipping under, you think of something you overheard a guide say earlier. The road doesn't reward the fast. It rewards the rested. It sounded cheesy at the time. Now it sounds like truth. At least until Machen starts snoring again. Sleep only lasts a few hours. Maybe 4, maybe less. You never really know out here. But the body learns to adapt. You wake with sand stuck to your cheek and a piece of dried date under your shoulder blade. Which is weird, because you're pretty sure you didn't even eat dates last night. Maybe you dreamed them. Or maybe your neighbor's snack stash migrated during the night. Either way, it's not the strangest thing that's happened to you on this trip. You stretch, joints popping like old floorboards. Around you, the camp is groaning back to life. One merchant is already brushing his teeth with a twig dipped in salt. Another is furiously repacking his wares after a goat wandered through his bags during the night. Camels rise, one by one, grumbling about it in camel speak, which mostly sounds like a blender full of gravel having a very bad day. Today, the desert is cooler, the wind a bit stronger. Sand swirls in little tornadoes across the ground, giving the horizon a dancing mirage quality. You cover your face with a cloth, eyes peeking through, and climb back onto Majnun, who gives you a side-eye that says, "Don't think I've forgotten that sandal." The caravan resumes its journey, and you settle into the familiar sway. With the sun still low, this is prime nap time. Your body slips into autopilot. Muscles adjust without thinking. Head bobs with the rhythm. And somewhere between second breakfast and fourth yawn, your mind starts to wander into weirder territory. You remember hearing an elder speak about camel dreams. Not dreams of camels, though let's be honest, those probably happen too. But dreams shared with camels. According to some Central Asian herders, if you ride the same camel long enough, sleep on it often enough, your dreams can start syncing up. You'll both see the same landscapes, the same oases, the same ghostly caravans wandering the dunes. Wild, right? Historians still argue whether this belief stemmed from spiritual tradition or just extreme desert boredom, but the stories persist. Some Silk Road travelers even recorded attempts to train their camels to recognize danger through dream alignment. They believed that by repeating certain words or visual symbols before sleep, they could influence the animal's intuition. A scroll from Dunhuang mentions a trader who claimed his camel refused to move the morning before a landslide struck the trail ahead. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the camel had one of those spooky premonition dreams we pretend to laugh off but secretly take very seriously at 3 a.m. Meanwhile, in your own waking dream, the scenery shifts again. Rocky outcrops give way to flatter terrain, and the dry air carries the scent of something unexpected. Herbs. Faint, minty, slightly bitter, almost medicinal. You scan the ground and notice sparse clumps of green poking through cracks in the earth. You nudge the rider next to you and gesture. He grins and says, "Ngaiku." for fever, or for sleep. Depends who you ask. This is mugwort. Yes, the same plant you saw used back at camp. But out here, it's more than just sleep aid. It's a survival tactic. Travelers steep it in water, crush it into poultices, even tuck it under their headscarves for clarity. One grizzled trader swears that mugwort under the tongue leads to lucid dreams where your dead uncle gives you stock advice. Okay. As the road winds forward, you pass an abandoned shrine nestled into the cliffside. Bones of candles sit at its base, alongside little satchels filled with dried herbs. Not for worship necessarily. More like sleep offerings. Imagine that. A stopgap nap sanctuary halfway across nowhere. You pause briefly to press your forehead to the cool stone. No big ritual. Just a gesture. Maybe you'll sleep better tonight. By midday, the heat returns with its full, breath-stealing intensity. You're sweating in places you didn't know had sweat glands. Everyone's quiet, conserving energy, heads wrapped, eyes lowered. Even Mushnan seems more subdued, less inclined to his usual dramatic sneezes. And it's in this stillness that the weirdest thing happens. You fall asleep while chewing. Seriously. You were halfway through a bite of a dried apricot, and next thing you know, you're dreaming about elephants wearing turbans. Welcome to Silk Road level exhaustion. These micro-sleeps aren't just common, they're necessary. Short, seconds-long lapses of consciousness that traders learn to balance with riding rhythms. Some historians compare them to the trance-like states observed in long-distance sailors or Sherpas. It's the body's way of saying, okay, fine, you won't give me a real nap? I'll take what I can get. To combat this, many merchants developed personalized sleep hacks. One wore bells on their sleeves. Not as decoration, but as an alert system. Nod off too far and jingle. Another smeared sour tamarind paste under their nose. Unpleasant but effective. There was even a rumor about a guy who tied a pebble inside his cheek to prevent false sleep. Innovative? Yes. Comfortable? Absolutely not. But then again, comfort was never the goal. Sustainability was. The trick wasn't in sleeping more, it was in sleeping cleverly. Like choosing breaks not just based on distance, but wind direction, so your ears wouldn't fill with sand while you dozed. Or rotating riding order so the strongest could sleep first, knowing someone else had the watch. And of course, there were the group lullabies. Not every caravan did them, but some had shared chants or call-and-response verses sung softly during twilight marches. Part entertainment, part meditation. It wasn't about harmony. It was about syncing breath, thoughts, and footsteps. About feeling like one big, lumbering organism inching across the earth together. As evening rolls in again and campfires begin to wink across the plain like blinking eyes, you find yourself oddly grateful for this rhythm. Grueling, yes. Grimy, yes. But also strangely intimate. There's something bonding about sleeping in motion, about closing your eyes while your body continues moving forward. A kind of trust, both in your beast and in the people beside you. You climb off Majnun, who again groans like you've insulted his lineage. You pat his flank. Sweet dreams, Drama King. He sneezes in response. Probably fair. And as you stretch your aching spine and start unfolding your rug for another night under the stars, you think again about the idea of shared dreams. Not the mystical kind, just a shared hope that tomorrow the road might be gentler, that the wind might stay cool, that tonight's sleep might last just long enough to feel real. Your body becomes a ledger of bruises, each one an ink blot shaped like a saddle buckle a misplaced pouch, or the edge of a bronze kettle. You've stopped counting them. Now you just name them. That one's Tuesday, and the one just below it? That's Machnun's revenge. The truth is, sleeping on a camel isn't a single event. It's an ongoing condition. This morning, you awaken to a soft grunting and a loud, unmistakable thwomp as a fellow traveller rolls off his mount mid-snore. Luckily, the sand catches him. Less lucky, he lands headfirst in a mess of camel droppings. You wince on his behalf, but he just pops up, wipes off his dignity, and climbs back up like it happens every Tuesday, which for him, it probably does. Your own sleeping system is getting more elaborate. You've layered your cloak with an extra sash for back support, wedged a water gourd in between the cargo bundles to act as a kind of spinal bumper. There's even a tiny sack of wool tied to the saddle horn, pressed right where your neck folds when you slump forward. It's barely comfort, more like a soft reminder that your head is still attached. Historians still argue whether these sleep hacks evolved from centuries of practice, or whether merchants just MacGyvered their way through each journey in delightful chaos. Either way, some of the designs stuck around. An excavated tomb near Kashgar even held what looked suspiciously like a travel pillow, a crescent-shaped cushion stuffed with goat hair, still clinging to the scent of cedar. But the real breakthrough? Sleep posture. You start to notice patterns among experienced traders. Some lean forward, arms wrapped around the hump like they're hugging a big furry suitcase. Others lie sideways, curled over saddlebags as though they've fainted from poetry. Then there are the back sleepers, who somehow manage to balance like statues while the camel ambles beneath them. No one trusts those people. In rare cases, two riders share one camel. One sleeps, one steers. Then they switch, wordlessly, in a maneuver so elegant it's almost dance-like. Some call it the cradling method. Others just mutter, desperation, you're getting better at it. Your body is no longer shocked by the swaying. Instead, you use it. Time your breathing to the gait. Tuck your chin just so. Soften your knees. Sleep, not despite the movement, but with it, like riding waves. Or a slow-motion roller coaster with less screaming and more sand in your socks. And that movement becomes a kind of lullaby. A camel's walk is strangely rhythmic. 3 beats, a pause, then the 4th. Like a sleepy drummer who's also chewing. Over time, it rewires your sleep cycles. Dreams come in loops. Same images, different colors. One night, it's a glowing city, carved into red cliffs. The next, it's the same city, but underwater, always just beyond reach. Always better rested than you. Some cultures along the Silk Road leaned into this. In parts of modern-day Turkmenistan, old songs describe dream travel as riding the back of the 4th moon, a poetic euphemism for unconscious camel riding. One 12th century folk tale even features a merchant who never dismounted for 2 years. He slept, ate, even married, all while strapped to the same shaggy beast. The story ends when the camel gets fed up and dumps him in a well. A metaphor, presumably, or a warning. Along the way today, your caravan passes a group heading the opposite direction. Their camels wear embroidered muscles. Their bells sound in eerie harmony. One rider is completely asleep, head tilted back like a puppet with cut strings. You nod respectfully. That's an advanced sleeper. The rest of the group doesn't even glance at you. That's how you know they're legit. Real travelers don't gawk. Later that night, the stars are unusually vivid, piercing, almost intrusive, like they're watching you sleep, taking notes. You roll to your side, face wrapped against the chill, and catch a whisper from nearby. A young trader is telling a story about the caravan, a mythical shadow caravan that only appears to those in half sleep. They say if you nod off at just the right moment, between one blink and the next, you'll find yourself riding beside them. Silent figures with glowing eyes, always moving east, never stopping. You ask what happens if you follow them. He shrugs. You never wake up? Charming. Still, your mind drifts as the fire dims. What if sleep isn't just rest here? What if it's a form of passage too? A parallel trail, just a breath away, accessible only through exhaustion and acceptance. You've been fighting the fatigue for days, trying to ration your awareness like water. But what if letting go is the real trick? After all, the Silk Road isn't just one route. It's many, overlapping, intersecting, some in daylight, some in dreams. You remember the strange charm an Uzbek apothecary slipped you days ago. A tiny pouch tied with golden thread. Inside, dried rose petals, crushed cardamom, a sliver of tiger bone, or so he claimed, and a single hair from a black mare. For sleep, he said, but not for rest. You didn't understand then. You might now. So tonight, you tie it to your sash, just in case. The wind shifts again. The dunes seem to breathe. And as Majnun lets out a deep, resonant snore, you match him. Your eyes fall shut, not with desperation, but with trust. And somewhere far beyond the waking trail, another caravan moves silently forward, through a desert that only exists when you sleep. The next day, you wake up with your mouth full of wool, or camel fur, possibly both. There's no telling what's made its way into your sleeping zone overnight. You spit delicately, like royalty sampling bad wine, and try not to reflect too deeply on what exactly you've inhaled. The good news, you slept. The better news, you stayed on the camel. Progress. Today's route takes you through a salt-crusted basin, the kind that crunches faintly beneath hooves like someone walking on frosted cereal. The sun hammers down with all the subtlety of a frying pan, and the horizon dances with mirages, wobbly blue illusions of lakes that vanish as soon as you get close. You've stopped trusting your eyes out here. Fortunately, your ears still work, and they're telling you something interesting. From further up the caravan comes the low, wavering hum of a song. It's not in a language you recognize, though you swear there's a word for socks in there somewhere. The tune loops lazily, like someone rocking a cradle too slowly. One of the older merchants has taken to singing lullabies while he rides, not to lull himself, but to keep others from tipping into the kind of deep, oblivious sleep that ends with a face-first dive into camel flank. The use of song to structure drowsiness isn't new out here. Historical records from the Tang dynasty mention camel drivers who sang counter lullabies, melodies tuned to just barely soothe, but mostly to regulate breath and heartbeat, keeping riders alert enough. Not quite a serenade, more of a sonic safety net. But here's the twist. Some routes actually required a dreamlike state. That's right. There were stretches where the landscape was so featureless, so punishingly repetitive, that riders wanted to slip into light trance states. Not full-on REM, mind you. That's how you end up waking up in the wrong province. But a kind of purposeful dozing. Historians still argue whether this practice emerged from necessity or from ritual. Was it spiritual, like Buddhist walking meditation? Or purely practical, the only way to get through 80 kilometers of sand, but slightly different? Either way, sleep wasn't a break from the journey. It was part of it. And when you really think about it, The camel itself is engineered for this shared rhythm. It moves like a lullaby. Its breathing is slow and deliberate, like a sentient beanbag chair with ambitions. Its grunts are oddly timed, a beat late, a tone low. Add the soft chime of harness bells and the occasional sneeze, and you've got yourself a desert symphony that no lo-fi playlist could compete with. It's no wonder some merchants began to treat their camels almost like sleep machines. They decorated them with tassels that swayed hypnotically, added saddle charms to jingle gently, and in some cases, this is not a joke, painted little patterns on their flanks to aid in dream travel. One account even describes a wealthy Sogdian trader who paid an artist to ink miniature landscapes onto his camel's side so he could ride through mountains while asleep. Bold move. You try to picture that now, slumping into sleep, your cheek pressed against a camel, painted with clouds and distant hills, while your actual self trudges across a sun-bleached void. In a way, it's a perfect metaphor for the Silk Road experience. Always between places, never quite here or there. Your saddle creaks, the leather's warm beneath your palms. You tighten the straps just slightly, not out of fear of falling, but to create that snug pressure that helps you drift. The same way weighted blankets do. No one on TikTok's invented camel compression therapy yet, but give it time. You drift into a light doze, not fully under, just enough that the world blurs at the edges. The sounds fade, then they deepen. You hear your own breath, feel your heartbeat in your wrists, and for a brief moment, the movement of the camel becomes your own. In this state, dreams slip in sideways. You see a caravan made of glass. Each rider is a mirror, reflecting stars. Camels walk on a path of floating stones. There's no wind, only silence. You're about to speak, but then snore. Loud, wet, real. You jerk upright to find Majnun. Yes, that delightful creature, staring back at you, chewing what might be your spare glove. He looks smug. You look betrayed. Again. Later, as the sun sinks low and the world takes on that golden wash that Instagram filters try so hard to imitate, your caravan halts by a trickling stream. A real one this time, not a mirage. You dismount slowly, knees trembling like jelly in a heat wave. Another rider offers you a small handful of dried lotus seeds. For sleep, they say, before the dreams come. Lotus, as it turns out, has been used in Vietnamese and Central Asian remedies for centuries. While it's mostly known for calming the mind, certain preparations, when mixed with saffron or fermented honey, can create a light hallucinogenic effect. That part's not advertised, but travelers whisper about it. How one bite can stretch a nap across hours, maybe days. Historians still argue whether these recipes were passed through families or through trade. Did the Mongol invasions bring the secrets westward? Or were the recipes smuggled, disguised as perfume sachets? No one can say for sure, but you're starting to see the overlap. Sleep and survival, dreams and direction. Tonight, as the fire crackles low, you lean back against your rolled saddle and sip a weak tea made from dried herbs you can't name. Someone hums nearby, a low looping tune. Familiar now, and as the stars press closer, as if trying to eavesdrop, you close your eyes and imagine yourself painted onto your camel's side. A miniature version, curled up beneath a crescent moon. Still riding, always riding, even when you sleep. It's morning again, though you're not quite sure how you got there. Did you dream you were awake, or wake in the middle of a dream? Either way, You're sore in places you didn't know had names. Your ribs, your kneecaps, your left eyebrow for some reason. But your mind? Calm. Strangely clear. As you groggily sip from a flask of water that's slightly warmer than you'd like, your ears catch a soft rustling near the pack animals. One of the older traders, short beard, sharper eyes, is tucking something into a bundle of cloth. You inch closer, pretending to fuss with your own saddle. But really you're watching him. What he's wrapping looks like moss or dried seaweed, but it's neither green nor salty. It's something else. He notices your curiosity and gives a small secretive smile. Desert veil, he says quietly, not looking up. Burn it before you sleep. Dream light. Wake easy. He might as well have said unicorn floss. But no time to interrogate. He's already drifting off, probably to go haggle over dates or whisper to his camel. This is where you start to realize something. Out here, sleep is currency, not money, but tradable. You give a favor, you get a secret nap trick in return. Offer dried apricots, receive a talisman to ward off nightmares. The exchange rate fluctuates wildly, but the economy, thriving. You start to ask around in hushed tones, gathering sleep rituals like stamps. One woman shares a scroll with instructions for wrapping jasmine buds in silk and slipping them under your head wrap. Opens the mind's eye, she says. Another swears by laying a stone, warmed in the fire, behind your knees. The heat climbs your spine, cools the dreams upward. Historians still argue whether these rituals came from regional superstitions or were developed on the road itself. Responses to trauma, to homesickness, to sheer boredom. No one agrees, but that doesn't stop people from treating sleep like a sacred ceremony. Every night, a tiny pilgrimage inwards. Back on the trail, the heat returns like a tax collector, unrelenting, rude, and wearing a dusty coat. Your camel trudges along steady and unimpressed. You notice now that he blinks slowly, like he's timing his own dreams mid-step. You try to mimic it, letting your eyes narrow until the world becomes slits of color and light. And somehow, this half-closed state becomes its own kind of alertness. You're not fully awake, but you're not dozing. You're hovering, like the merchants who used to say the space between waking and sleeping was when the gods whispered business advice. Sell the cinnamon before the monsoon, or never trust a man with polished hooves. It's not all myths and whispers, though. There are practical tactics, too. Historical texts from Kashgar to Merv mention specialized sleep platforms, makeshift hammock rigs strung between camels for the very wealthy or the very tired. These things were like miniature beds mounted above the saddle line, allowing the rider to lie back without losing balance. You imagine yourself nestled in one now, dangling like a very dignified sack of grain, swaying with the camel's movement. Of course, these contraptions weren't always safe. One particularly tragic report describes a merchant who fell asleep in such a hammock, only to be pitched sideways during a sudden sandstorm and wake up nose first in a cactus grove. And then there's the matter of dreams. Who you dream about can mean everything. Along the Silk Road, it was believed that dreams were more than subconscious leftovers. They were prophecies, messages, even trades of their own. Dream of water. A caravan might soon arrive with Persian glass. Dream of a tiger. Time to check your coin pouch. Some even brought dream interpreters with them. Usually older women, often blind, always blunt. These dream guides would sit near the fire, eyes shut, heads tilted, as you nervously explained how you were chased by a flaming goat into a moonlit bazaar. Ah, one might say, You're traveling too fast, but thinking too slow. Eat fewer figs, another might mutter, without context. Historians still argue whether these interpretations were rooted in actual regional folklore or were made up on the spot just to keep things entertaining. You suspect both. You start to realize how vital these nightly stories were. Not just for comfort, but for guidance. Out here, where maps lie and stars shift with sandstorms, the dream becomes the compass. And the camel? Steer your ship through it all. Slow, sure. Unimpressed by your mortal concerns, you lean back a bit further in your saddle, letting your limbs go heavy. The sun has dropped low again, and your eyelids feel stuffed with sand. The movement beneath you is hypnotic. Your breath sinks with the rise and fall of each padded step. There's a scent in the air. Not sweat or dust, but something floral, faint. Someone must have lit that desert veil moss the trader spoke of. It curls through your thoughts like silk through fingers. The landscape softens, and again you fall inward. This time, your dream is clear. You walk beside a camel that is made of starlight. Its hooves leave moon-shaped prints in the sand. Ahead of you, a tent glows golden, lit from within by nothing you can see. As you reach for the flap, something tugs your sleeve. You turn, and it's you. Older, eyes laughing. You don't speak, but you both nod. Understanding. You jolt awake moments later. The sound of someone laughing at a farting camel, breaking your trance. Ah, yes. Reality. Right on cue. You blink, shift in your saddle, and wonder what it meant. Maybe everything. Maybe nothing. The stars begin to show again, pricked like tiny holes in a warm leather sky. You think you hear that same lullaby from earlier. Or maybe it's just your thoughts humming to themselves. Either way, you're ready to ride the next dream, whenever it comes. The night comes thick and quick. One moment, the world is painted in burnt oranges and golds, and the next, it's all dusky purples and dark velvet, like someone yanked a curtain across the sun. You feel your body react before your mind does, shoulders slumping, your hips molding into the camel's shifting rhythm, your jaw unclenching like it forgot it had a grudge. You're not the only one. Around you, the caravan stretches thinner, conversations grow quieter, and some riders simply stop talking altogether. It's like everyone is preparing for a kind of shared ritual where the moon is both clock and companion. There's a method to it. These traveling insomniacs know exactly how to lean, how to nod just far enough forward that your forehead doesn't collide with your camel's neck. One merchant you watch has wrapped a length of woven wool around his head and saddle horn, like a bizarre seatbelt for his skull. It works, somehow. He's already snoring gently through his nostrils. Historians still argue whether this night caravanning was a norm or a necessity. Some records claim that travelers preferred to move at night to avoid the heat and maximize distance. Others suggest that moonlit journeys were reserved for those desperate enough to trade comfort for speed, spurred on by bandits, sandstorms, or tax collectors with a personal vendetta. Whatever the reason, this twilight travel required a special kind of endurance. And sleep became more like blinking, brief, fragmented, and precious. You learn to grab it in pieces like trying to collect water from dew. One trick you try, because you're desperate, let's be honest, is to count the camel's steps. Left, right, left, squish, right. It works for about 40 seconds before you realize your camel has the most erratic gait in Central Asia. Either he's doing it on purpose, or he's just jazzing it up to keep things interesting. You squint down at his head. He doesn't even blink. There are whispers of elite caravans employing sleep masters, people who specialize in guiding riders into trance-like states, through chant, rhythmic drumming, or, in one bizarre account, synchronized beard stroking. These men and women supposedly used ancient tonal patterns to lull even the most neurotic merchant into dreamland without so much as a pillow. One French explorer in the 19th century claimed he encountered a caravan that used a drum tied to the lead camel, its beat gradually slowing over time, encouraging the group to sink into rhythmic sleep. It was like dreaming on a heartbeat, he wrote, or would have written if you believed half of what 19th century explorers said. Still, you wonder, maybe there's a science to it, or maybe it's all placebo held together by incense and camel breath. Back near the center of the train, someone strikes a small iron bowl. A soft ting floats down the line, and slowly riders start murmuring a prayer. It's in no single language you recognize. Bits of Persian, hints of Sanskrit, something Turkic. But the tone is universal. Reverence, fatigue, the hope that if anything's out there watching, it won't mess with you tonight. Sleep for these travelers is almost divine. Every nap is a negotiation with the unknown, and every successful rest, a blessing. Some even keep talismans strapped to their mounts, tiny carved wood charms that rattle like dried seeds when the wind hits right. Supposedly, they drive off evil dreams, though the sound just makes you think of wind chimes that drank too much. One older man tells you of a tale, probably made up, but you humor him. He says there was once a merchant so good at sleeping on camelback that he could dream with his eyes open, saw visions of trade deals in Baghdad while crossing the Taklamakan, negotiated entire contracts in his mind, and awoke with the correct coinage already counted in his pouch. He was either enlightened, the man says, or concussed. You believe both. That's when it hits you. You haven't seen a mirror in days, and frankly, you don't want to. You feel like a sand-blasted raisin wearing a hat. But internally, you're okay. Not thriving, but not unraveling. And that's something. You shift again in your saddle, wrapping a scarf tighter around your chin. The wind's picked up, and with it, that familiar low whistle through the dunes. Someone's humming near the back. You catch the tune. It's that same lullaby again. Either it's following you, or the desert has only one song. A few camels emit a guttural, bubbly groan, a sound like a bassoon falling downstairs. It should be annoying. Instead, it's oddly comforting. It means they're content, or plotting. Could go either way. The stars above are clearer now, like some cosmic backlight was finally turned up. You spot a few constellations you recognize, others you definitely invent. There's one that looks like a donkey wearing a crown. You name it, Sir Sleepington, patron saint of mid-journey naps. Then, as the trail dips into a narrow canyon, everything gets quieter. The walls muffle wind and sound, and your ears start to pick up strange things. Your heartbeat, the shift of sand under hooves, the distant flap of a canvas top. And just like that, you feel it again, that tightrope state. Not awake, not asleep, somewhere sideways. You wonder if this is how monks feel in meditation, or cats when they pretend to ignore you. Your head nods. Once, twice. And then, you're gone. Not for long, maybe 2 minutes. But when you return, the canyon has opened into a shallow plain, and the moon is halfway up the sky. You feel changed, though, slightly disassembled, as if part of you stayed behind on that trail, lounging in the air, waiting for you to circle back. The traders around you start to settle in, camp for the night. Some will lay on sand-smooth tarps. Others curl against their beasts, using camel hips like ergonomic beanbags. You choose your spot. A small rise, soft enough far from the latrine tents, and drop your pack. Tonight, you try something new. A piece of the dream veil moss. You light it carefully. Let the smoke rise. It smells like lavender and forgotten books. You breathe deep. Let your eyes close. And soon, the camel's groan becomes thunder. The stars, little brass bells. The sand beneath you, a silk hammock. Another dream, just out of reach. Another piece of yourself floating forward to meet it. Your eyes crack open with the kind of reluctance that only comes from a night spent chasing sleep like a mirage. Around you, the sky is still dark but fading. Navy sliding toward a dusty grey, like a charcoal smudge rubbed thin. Dawn is close, but not quite here. And in this in-between, the caravan begins to stir. You sit up slowly. The sand is cold, and your back protests with all the charm of a camel in molten season. Someone nearby is boiling tea over a whispering flame, and the scent of star anise and fennel drifts your way, sweet, spicy, a bit like someone melted a licorice stick into your dreams. Breakfast is light. A handful of dates, some hard bread that could also double as a projectile weapon, and a square of dried goat cheese that tastes, generously, like a leather boot got cozy with a barn. But calories are calories, and your stomach's got zero judgment at this hour. Once the camels are repacked and the fires are doused, the caravan moves on. Still half asleep, still dreaming. There's a kind of magic in that, isn't there? That you can be both moving and not really awake. Like your body's on autopilot and your brain is somewhere sipping that fennel tea under a nicer blanket. One of the older traders beside you mutters a phrase in an unfamiliar dialect. You ask him what it means, and he grins with a mouth missing 2 teeth. Don't wake the sky too fast, she bites. Which honestly feels like advice worth keeping on a t-shirt. As you sway forward, you notice something odd about the man's camel. On its saddle, attached by thin cords of dyed silk, are little leather pouches, about the size of a matchbox each. Every time the camel steps, they rattle softly. You ask. He shrugs. Dream traps, he says. Catch the bad ones before they catch you. It sounds made up. It probably is. But you love it anyway. Historians still argue whether such charms were superstition or subtle psychological tools, designed less to protect from nightmares and more to give riders a comforting illusion of control in an otherwise chaotic world. Either way, those little pouches have been found in ancient burial sites along desert trade routes, tucked beside worn prayer beads and shattered glass perfume flasks. You spend the next few hours scanning the horizon. The desert is flatter here, wide as a sigh. No bandits, no ghosts, just more sky, more camel humps bobbing like woolly ships on a sand sea. At some point, you realize you're humming again, that same tune from before, the lullaby you keep pretending not to know. The sun finally climbs up over the rim of the earth, dragging color back into the world like someone pulling open thick velvet curtains. Gold, pink, orange. The sand glows like powdered coral. The camels snort in agreement. And then you hear something. A faint buzzing. No clinking. Metallic. You squint. A cluster of travelers is gathering ahead around a low dune. When you reach them, you find a strange sight. A small stone marker, half buried in sand, crowned by a rusted iron ring, and a bundle of dried herbs bound with red twine. It's a sleep shrine, someone whispers. Left here decades ago, maybe longer. A spot where caravans used to stop specifically to rest, pray, and offer gifts to the spirits of safe passage and safe dreaming. You take a closer look. The herbs are long dead, but the scent still lingers faintly. Lemongrass, clove, maybe even mugwort, an herb used in some parts of Asia to induce vivid dreams and ward off evil while sleeping. A few of the traders leave coins. One woman removes a silver pin from her shawl and places it delicately on the stone. You decide to leave something too. A thread pulled from your sleeve, dyed blue. Small, but honest. Maybe enough. One man lights a cone of resin incense. It sparks, then smolders, and soon the wind carries the scent. Sweet, smoky, grounding across the camp. No one says much. No one needs to. This is one of those moments that stretches time thin and makes you forget that this is technically work, technically dangerous, and definitely full of camel spit. Somewhere in the ritual, your thoughts drift again. You wonder what dreams people had right here centuries ago. Did they dream of profit? Of home? Of not falling off their camel mid-snore and being trampled by the spice shipment? You'll never know. But here's a fun tidbit. One explorer's journal from the Tang dynasty describes a fellow merchant so obsessed with sleep quality that he carried a polished wooden cot with tiny brass legs, which could be strapped to his camel's saddle like a mattress on stilts. He swore it helped his posture, though he died of back pain at 42. Still, points for effort. You mount your own camel again, no brass-legged cot in sight, and rejoin the slow tide of the caravan. Ahead lies another day, another 100 tiny stories. But behind you now is that shrine, fading into the dunes like everything else in the desert. Important, then invisible. And that's when your body surprises you. You yawn. Not the polite kind, but the deep, jaw-clicking, full-body kind that says, "Yep, we're going to need a nap stat." You slump slightly in the saddle. Adjust a fold of your scarf over your face. Sink just enough to feel your spine melt into the sway. And despite the brightening sky, despite the chatter of traders and the grinding of wheels, you fall asleep again, just for a moment. But it's enough. Your dream this time is ridiculous. You're riding a camel made of clouds, wearing a crown of dumplings, being chased by a sandstorm that keeps shouting 2 for 1 paprika. In an oddly specific accent. You wake up giggling, and no one notices. Because out here, everyone's got a weird dream story. The sun is higher now, and it's hot in that dry, slapping way, like being smacked with a warm sponge by a grumpy oven. Your camel's fur smells strongly of everything it's ever eaten and laid on, which is mostly other camels, based on the stench. You blink away the last wisps of sleep and dream dumplings, only to discover your left cheek has been imprinted with the pattern of your saddlebag. Fashionable. The caravan slows as it reaches a patch of more rugged terrain. The sand gives way to a jumble of rocky outcrops and dried riverbeds, the kind that used to hold water back when the planet was a little kinder. Your guide calls a halt, not just to avoid snapping an ankle, but because it's the right time for the midday siesta. Yes, that's a thing. Even desert traders understood the fine art of a scheduled nap. Blankets are laid out in shaded patches. Water skins are passed around. Someone hands you a bundle of dried lavender and vetiver tied together with camel hair. It's a makeshift sleep sachet, they explain, meant to keep your dreams soft and your sinuses soothed while you sleep. Historians still argue whether such herbal bundles served a real medicinal purpose or were just comfort objects passed down like your grandma's lucky nightgown. But either way, they worked. Even in the blistering sun, the scent cools your mind like a mint leaf dunked in mountain water. You tuck it into your sash, lie back, and breathe in. A breeze brushes past, lifting little eddies of dust. The traders around you are already dozing, some under cloth canopies, others just leaning against their bundles of silk and spice like they're hugging a very crinkly teddy bear. Here's the thing about siestas in the desert. They're not just indulgent. They're survival. Move during the peak heat and your camel might collapse. Or worse, you might start hallucinating and mistake your own water flask for a talking lizard. Not that that's ever happened. Twice. So, you close your eyes again. The second sleep hits differently. You're halfway between dreams and awareness, lulled by the thrum of insects and the distant rhythmic groaning of resting camels. You wonder as the haze sets in how often these traders ever saw a real bed. A wooden frame, a feather pillow, a room not made of wind and canvas. One Chinese merchant scroll from the 9th century mentions longing for his wife's rice-stuffed mattress more than he missed her cooking. That's oddly sweet. Or maybe just a sign of how rough these road naps really were. Comfort was a memory you carried with you, like a pressed flower or an old bruise. But occasionally, some traders got fancy. There's at least one account of a wealthy Persian caravan leader who had his servants lashed together, 2 camels side by side to create a sleeping platform between them. He'd lie across it like a hammock, strung between moving sandships, wrapped in brocade and smugness. Legend has it he snored so loudly it scared off wolves. Respect. Your nap is shorter than you want. The call to move comes just as your dreams start to get good. Something about an apricot orchard and a very flirty goat. You sit up groggily, chew on a mint leaf someone hands you, and hoist yourself back into the saddle. The camel grunts at you. You grunt back. Mutual respect is established. You sway forward again. There's something about that post-nap rhythm that feels even more hypnotic. You watch the shadows lengthen and the horizons shimmer. Someone singing a low, droning tune in a language you don't know, but you hum along anyway. The terrain shifts once more. You reach a ridge and pause. Below lies a small oasis, more suggestion than certainty. A cluster of palm trees, a thin pond half choked with reeds, and beside it, the ruins of a stone outpost, crumbled walls, a roof long since surrendered to time. Your guide grins and points. In, he says simply. Turns out this used to be a rest stop for caravans, sort of a desert motel, minus the questionable vending machines. Merchants would stop here to bathe, rest, and, most crucially, catch a full night's sleep without having to rock around on a moving camel like some kind of bumpy burrito. Inside what remains of the structure, you see niches carved into the walls, possibly for lanterns, possibly for sacred icons. There's an old fire pit in the center, and remnants of worn stone slabs where bedding once was laid. It's nothing like the palace your spine dreams of, but it's solid, quiet, safe. One of the elders tells you a story while the camels drink. A legend about a trader who once slept here so deeply. His dreams leaked into the waking world. He woke up fluent in 4 languages and convinced his camel could quote poetry. No one could prove him wrong, so he opened a school. True or not, it makes you smile. Historians still argue whether these remote outposts were more for trade regulation or traveler safety. But inscriptions left behind, scribbled prayers, carved initials, and in one case, a drawing of what might be an ancient sleeping position chart, suggest they held emotional significance too. You stretch your legs inside the ruin. A breeze rustles through the palm fronds, carrying with it the faint, damp perfume of the water below. It's like the air is sighing, and you finally sigh with it. Night begins to creep back in, like ink spilled across parchment. Torches are lit, blankets unfurled. Tonight, you'll sleep not on a moving camel, but beneath the skeletal arms of what used to be a roof. A luxury. Before bed, someone hands you a thin strip of dried fruit and a sip of rice wine. For dreams, they say. Help smooth the edges. You lie down, watch the stars blink on one by one. You think about dream traps, about sand-soaked shrines, about the way sleep here feels like a tiny rebellion against everything loud, hot, and real. You smile, then you fall asleep. No camel rocking this time. Just the steady hush of wind through ruin walls and the soft, dry laughter of someone nearby who's probably dreaming of goats again. Your eyes flick open just before dawn, when the sky is the color of weak tea and the desert still holds the ghost of night's chill. You pull your blanket closer, listening to the groans and shuffles of the caravan waking around you. The camels stretch their necks like creaky ballerinas and snort as if deeply offended by the return of responsibility. You sit up slowly, your back popping like bubble wrap. The stone slab wasn't exactly orthopedic. Someone hands you a bowl of warm millet porridge laced with dates, and you eat it while the horizon glows red-orange. The sun, it seems, is about to clock in again. There's a peacefulness in this shared exhaustion. Everyone's hair is wild. Everyone smells a little tragic. But there's something comforting in knowing that, together, you've all survived another night of nomadic half-sleep and managed to not be eaten by anything larger than a beetle. The caravan is lighter today. Fewer crates, fewer arguments. Some traders stayed behind at the oasis outpost, either to recover or, in the case of one very tired-looking merchant, to propose marriage to the local bread maker. You suspect it's mostly about the soft mattresses she reportedly owns. But love is love. The camels are reloaded with fresh supplies and rewrapped in their patchwork quilt of burlap silk and wishful thinking. One of them has a small pillow tied to its saddle now. Someone got creative. You recognize the pillow from last night's ruins. Probably haunted, too tired to care. Back on your mount, you sway into motion again. The desert rolls out like a baked ocean, all tan and gold, and harsh serenity. Your muscles have stopped protesting. Instead, they just sigh a little with each step, like theater kids forced to jog. As the caravan moves, the old trader beside you leans over and asks, not for the first time, "You sleep last night?" You nod. "Better than usual?" He grins, showing 2 gold teeth and 1 conspicuously absent molar. "Ah," he says, tapping his temple. "Stone dreams, they stay longer." Now, whether stone dreams is a metaphor for lasting rest or a side effect of sleeping near mildly radioactive ruins is unclear. Historians still argue whether these oasis shelters were actually meant for sleeping, or if they were spiritual waypoints disguised as bunkhouses. Some ancient records suggest religious rites were performed under the stars there, using dream herbs and ritual chants. Others suggest people just wanted a nap without scorpions. Either way, your dreams did feel different. Less like scattered puzzle pieces, more like a full picture. Maybe it was the calm. Maybe it was the fruit wine. Maybe it was the camel-shaped hole in your soul being temporarily filled by a horizontal surface. There's something ancient about sleep on the road. Something universal. Every culture has its lullabies, its bedtime rituals, its lucky charms under pillows. For the Silk Road travelers, sleep wasn't just rest. It was resistance against the elements. It was mental armor against monotony, weather and theft. It was where you stored the part of yourself that still felt human. You hear a song rising again from the middle of the line. It's the same tune from yesterday, but this time it's layered. Other voices join in, creating a sleepy harmony. You recognize these phrases in Persian, Mongolian, Mandarin, and something you can't place at all. It's a lullaby, you realize, being sung backward. Apparently, that was a superstition. Singing a lullaby in reverse was believed to wake up your spirit and keep you alert on dangerous stretches, or give you a migraine. Results may vary. The heat starts to build again. You adjust your scarf and squint ahead. The land flattens out, revealing a glimmering trail of dust in the distance. Another caravan? A mirage? Possibly both. You remember stories from last night. Whole camel trains wandering after illusions, chasing false oases, sleepwalking into disaster. Some say they still march in circles out there, spectral silhouettes of merchants too tired to ask for directions. Someone passes around another round of mint leaves. You chew it like gum, letting the coolness chase off the yawn rising in your chest. But even now, even in motion, your body craves the lull again. Your head dips, your eyes flutter. You start to find the rhythm of your camel's gait again, like waves lapping against a boat. And suddenly, you get it. You understand how they did it, how they actually managed to sleep on these lurching beasts, mile after mile. It wasn't just about hammocks, or bundled silks, or little herb pillows tucked under their arms. It was about surrender. You give up trying to stay alert. You let the motion rock you. You trust the camel, this weird huffing creature that despite its constant attitude, knows the way. You surrender to the road and its law, like the traders before you, like the ones after. As you nod off, forehead pressed to the saddle horn, a memory drifts up, something your guide said yesterday. The road is long, but the sleep is short, so take it when it comes. Good advice, even if it came from someone who snores like a collapsing tent. So you drift again. Not into deep sleep, but into that Silk Road limbo, half dreaming, half listening. Your heartbeat sinking to the footsteps of beasts and the hum of desert air. You dream of markets you've never seen, of songs you've never learned, of beds that move and breathe beneath you. And somehow, it's enough. The camel hums in its throat, a sound like someone mumbling underwater, and the breeze picks up slightly, carrying grains of dust that somehow feel lighter than before. Even the saddle, stiff and patched, has begun to mold to your shape like it's memorized you. You let go of tension in your shoulders. Let the weight of your pack become background noise. Let the road do the carrying. The voices behind you fade into murmurs, the songs becoming echoes, and your awareness begins to loosen, like threads slipping gently from a loom. You're not quite awake, not fully asleep, floating somewhere in between. Held up not by blankets or beds, but by rhythm and wind and sun-warmed air. There's no urgency here, no pressure to dream of anything profound, just a soft knowing that others walk this path before you, bone-weary and hopeful, seeking rest wherever it could be found, on stones, under stars, in hammocks, tied to lumbering beasts. And that they too found peace in moments like this, not because the road was easy, but because they let go just enough to be carried. So you let yourself drift, just a little longer. Maybe until the next oasis. Maybe until the end of the desert. Or maybe just until the dream.